I like Kemper.
You were able to appear like an ordinary person, non-threatening to...
I lived as an ordinary person most of my life, even though I was living a parallel and increasingly sick life, other life. One victim let me back in the car. I locked myself out. She opened the door for me. My gun was under the seat. What in the hell am I doing telling you that? Am I a masochist? Am I looking to be tormented further? I'm trying to show you just how awful this got, how commanding these rages got.
You can hear the sheer detachment in his voice. This was a man who charmed women with his intellectual gifts and his perverse control, drawing them in even while they sensed danger. He was capable of negotiating a woman into opening the door for him, despite the fact that she knew she'd be in danger and quite possibly killed. The terrifying truth is, they couldn't resist his charm.
Welcome to CrimeScope USA. Before we get into the video, do smash that like and subscribe button to help the channel. Also, don't forget to ring that notification bell so as not to miss any new videos from us.
Standing at about 6'9", quite possibly the largest man you'd probably ever see, and with an IQ of 145. He was the most brilliant, towering anomaly whose immense physical and intellectual gifts were twisted into a nightmare on Earth for the unfortunate co-ed students and other travelers who crossed his path in California. He was a master manipulator who could charm a conversation out of you while calculating the depth of your vulnerability. This is the story of Ed Kemper, the co-ed killer, a man whose crimes began not in the dark of night, but in the oppressive shadow of his own tortured family life. Edmund Emile Kemper III was a genetic misfortune, an intimidating giant born into a household defined by cruelty and profound humiliation. His mother, Clarnell Stromberg, was the architect of his psychological torment, forcing him to live in the cellar, convinced he harbored a mental sickness. She alienated him, often mocking his size and intellect, creating an atmosphere so toxic that the young Kemper was consumed by a quiet, mounting rage. This rage found its first terrifying expression early on. But the engine that truly drove him was an obsession for control over people's lives. The ultimate target of his deep-seated resentment was the only figure of authority and control in his life: his mother. At the age of just 15, Kemper acted out on this internal violence when he had a little verbal argument with his grandparents. He was living with them on a ranch in North Fork, California. After this argument with his grandmother, Maud Matilda Huggy Kemper, he shot her in the head and back with a .22 rifle. When his grandfather, Edmund Emile Kemper, returned home from grocery shopping, Kemper shot him too. He later said he killed his grandmother to see what it felt like, and shot his grandfather so he wouldn't have to find out what happened to his wife. After the murders, Kemper called his mother to report his deeds and gloat. She told him to contact the police, or she would call them instead. He was arrested and later diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic, though he was later deemed sane when released at 21. Murdering both his grandparents, this was the psychological watershed moment. It secured his first institutionalization at the Atascadero State Hospital. Kemper spent 5 years in the institution, but his genius was his defense. With an IQ of 145, he systematically learned to manipulate their evaluators, regurgitating their theories and presenting a flawless facade of a man cured. He knew exactly what they wanted to hear. At the age of 21, he was deemed safe and released, certified as mentally sound, but with a sophisticated darkness waiting to be unleashed. Released and towering over the world, Kemper sought work, ultimately landing a job with the California Division of Highways, a perfect camouflage that allowed him to cruise the state's roadways. He was now armed with a powerful physical presence, a high IQ, and a persuasive, handsome charm. He began to hunt. His targets were deliberate, chosen with a twisted symbolic logic. His first known adult victims were Marianne Pesce and Anita Lucchesa, both college students he charmed gracefully and offered them a ride home. He told police later that he strangled them and took their bodies to his apartment, where he performed unspeakable acts to them before dismembering and discarding their remains. Kemper's pattern grew more violent when, in September 1972, he picked up Eiko Ku, a dance student. He pulled a gun on her, accidentally locked himself out of the car, but somehow charmed his way through it and convinced her to let him back in. He then suffocated her and brought her body home. That mix of cold logic and manipulation defined him. Over the next year, he killed 4 more college students, Cindy Shaw, Rosalind Thorpe, and Alice Liu among them. He stored body parts in his apartment, buried heads in his mother's garden, and continued to appear harmless to everyone around him. The crimes were not simply about taking a life, but about possessing the victim entirely. The psychological control began with the lure, using his seemingly gentle demeanor to earn their trust before the final brutal takeover. But the true horror lay in his hedonistic ritual of violation. This was not incidental, it was the final, defining act of control. The post-mortem acts were the core of his pathology. Kemper would transport the bodies, where he would engage in horrifying acts of necrophilia and systematic mutilation before disposing them. To prolong his control, he would take trophies, disarticulated hands, heads, and photographs. He treated his victims' remains as prized possessions, storing them, studying them, and sometimes burying them, only to dig them up later. This process allowed him to relive and maintain the power of the moment long after the violence was over. He was a master of self-regulation. He was always stopped and questioned by police, but he used his intellect and blank demeanor to deflect suspicion, knowing exactly how to play the role of a harmless giant. The police were searching for a frenzied maniac, when they should have been looking for a calm and calculating genius who had meticulously hoodwinked them repeatedly. After a while, he then realized his cycle of violence would never be complete until he confronted the object of his ultimate internalized rage, his mother. In April 1973, the tension finally snapped. Kemper drove to his mother's house, broke in, murdered her in the sleep, and then subjected her body to a final desecration. This act was the ultimate, perverse liberation. To complete the scene and eliminate a witness, he also killed his mother's friend, Sarah Hallett, when she came to visit. Then Kemper drove across the country listening to the radio, and in a final, chilling display of narcissistic control, he called the police from a phone booth in Colorado. The confession was not motivated by guilt, but an absolute need to finalize his narrative and ensure the world understood the genius behind the monster. The conversation was surreal. A calm, articulate man volunteering the location of the bodies they had been searching throughout the past year. He returned to California and was arrested. In court, Kemper waived the insanity defense, providing chillingly intelligent testimony. He wasn't trying to escape, he was trying to boast. He offered the court a cold, horrifying map of his own mind, detailing his motives, methods, and the deep satisfaction he took from his acts. He was sentenced to 8 consecutive life terms and remains incarcerated, a man who knows his own darkness better than any psychiatrist. Ed Kemper's story is a terrifying study of how intellect and pathology can fuse into absolute evil. He did not become a monster despite his intelligence. He became a monster because of it, using his high IQ to manipulate the mental health system, evade law enforcement, and articulate his perverse philosophy of control. He knew exactly what he was doing and relished the recognition and attention his brutal honesty brought him. Please like this video, subscribe for more deep dives into the minds of history's most compelling serial killers, and we'll see you in the next one.